Hello and welcome to the channel that teaches you the things your parents and teachers are too afraid to, the Helios blog. Today, Jordan Peterson and Piers Morgan. Fierce debate. How could this go wrong?
The reason she's alone is because she's difficult.
Women are not accepting the bare minimum.
Women fuck men they respect.
All the women who say things like, I'm strong, independent, I don't need no man, like, y'all impress me.
Women just gaslight each other and say what they want to hear.
Sorry, I just have to point out, look at Piers' neck for a sec.
30 years' time.
Well, I would hesitate to hazard any guesses about a time that distant. I mean, things are changing so rapidly that I can see about a year into the future, and that's about all. That's true personally and more on the world stage. I would say, in general, the world is the same as it's ever been. You know, it has an archetypal or eternal nature, but it's unfolding at an unprecedented rate, and so we're seeing the nature of its reality more starkly and more clearly, and with greater consequences for ill and for good than has ever been the case in the history of the world.
It's just the internet and connectivity, right? Interconnectivity that speeds things up like this, I think.
And so the one thing that's going to be certain for my grandson is that things are going to be happening at an unprecedented rate. You know, and that's a revolutionary change in and of itself. I think that the future isn't written in stone, so to speak, and that we all have the option to tilt the world uphill or downhill with every word we utter and everything we do. And what that means for us now and for my grandchild is that the world that's going to unfold could be a far better place than it's ever been, perhaps even inconceivably better, or it could be a hell that would make World War II or Maoist China or Stalinist Russia look like a warm-up. And you see, Piers, as we become more technologically powerful,
I certainly hope
the
not.
Consequences of our
I certainly hope not.
moral or immoral actions start to mount. And so we have become staggeringly more technologically proficient, especially in the last 100 years. And we need to develop a wise morality that's commensurate with that technological power. And that's really been true, I would say, since the end of World War II with the development of hydrogen bomb technology. That was in the early 50s. The atom bomb was
More like the pill.
enough, but the hydrogen bomb really put the cap on it. So I'm hoping that we will develop an increment in conscious wisdom that enables us to deal with the unbelievable opportunities that are provided to us by our remarkable and rapidly improving technology.
What is fascinating, I think, it was a survey that just came out actually about teenage mental health issues. And what it established was that
Worse than they've ever been because of social media.
the actual quality of life for teenagers is probably as good as it's ever been. I mean, on almost every metric now, this is the best time to ever be alive. And the survey concluded it's not events themselves that are causing so much anxiety amongst young people, and it's a real epidemic, I think, amongst young people. It's not the events themselves. It's through what device and how those events are being disseminated. And that really resonated with me because I really do believe that kind of constant dopamine effect of selective, often very misleading or just downright false propaganda, video imagery and so on, bombard.
Yeah, I forgot what the expression was, but I saw it in passing. It's something like, through a certain cameraman's lens, a particular history can be recorded, right? An incorrect version of history. The point being that, like, if you have some kind of negative, agenda that you want to put forth, if you have some kind of negative agenda, you can really blind people very well in the modern world, right? Like, look at modern media and technology and all that, right? Like, effectively, modern media and technology, a lot of it amounts to just propaganda and lies, right? Just fooling people for the purpose of getting them to do what you want, right? It's all for personal gain, for money, for profit, and at the expense of who? Well, as they say, the famous adage is, a fool and his money are soon parted, right? So the principle is, if you are a fool because of, all the social media and all this garbage you're watching, TikTok, and rotting your brain, because that's effectively what it does, right? Like TikTok and all this social media, all it really amounts to is making yourself stupid, right? Because social media, right, what it does is, like, TikTok and things like that, is it makes your attention span that of a gnat. And when your attention span is that of a gnat, you can't focus on things. When you can't focus on things, and you're just a slave to whatever is the flavor of the day, you're not really able to make good decisions, good choices. They're literally destroying children's brains through this method. And what is the purpose of it? Well, the purpose of it is control, right? You have a small population of people that don't drink the Kool-Aid, as it were. Those people become the leaders. Everyone else is useless sheep, right? They just do whatever you tell them to do and believe whatever you tell them to believe. You just don't tell them directly. You say, social media said it, right? It's just like how religion used to be used, right? Oh, don't listen to me. I'm not the authority here. No, God is the authority. But you have to do what I say because God wills it, right? This utter nonsense is the way that the modern world works, right? And this is what we're expected to, the system we're expected to subjugate ourselves to. And of course, it's utterly ridiculous, right? And it's nonsense, but most people will fall for it, hook, line, and sinker.
In young people's minds, it cannot be a good thing. What do we do as technology gets ever more advanced? What do we do about that?
Well, one of the things we need to realize at a very deep level is that man does not live by bread alone. And that means that the provision of ample material security is insufficient. People need a vision for their life. They need something to strive for that's worth striving for, and they need structures that protect them from too much uncertainty and chaos.
Right, and I would argue that TikTok and crap like that is very chaotic and unstructured. But anyway, I digress.
That's why in October, for example, we hosted the first Alliance for Responsible Citizenship conference and dedicated it towards trying to elaborate out a better story. A story is a framework that provides a vision and that provides security. And we've provided our children with unparalleled material security and opportunity, as you pointed out, in ever-increasing amounts and with increased ease. But at the same time, we've sunk into a very deep spiritual malaise.
Indeed.
A malaise that's so deep that people are willing, especially on the atheistic materialist side, to dispense with the idea that life itself has any transcendent meaning whatsoever. And the problem with that is that you can starve to death spiritually in the midst of plenty, and that's certainly what's happening to young people. Now, part of that is also a technical...
And the irony, right, is that the Roman Empire fell to the same machinations, arguably, right? They fell to the same crap. And here's what I mean. They fell, when I say they fell to the same crap, I mean they fell into a spiritual malaise that they could not break out of, right? Things just became very untenable. And, it was very hard to hold the empire together, of course, as well. But that's neither here nor there.
Logical consequence of the gadgetry itself. I've seen, especially in the last year or so, visiting young people in my family and among my extended friends who will attend a social event, even a private social event with a small number of people, and be entirely glued to their phone the entire time. And I don't think...
That's very bad, of course. I mean, without a doubt. But why is it bad? Well, it's bad for the following reason. It's bad because you're not getting your social interaction in. And because you're not getting your social interaction in, you're becoming weird, right? And I mean, that's all that needs to be said, right? It's obviously not good for a person. Okay. When I say weird, I mean socially weird. I mean unable to interact with people the way they're supposed to. And because they're unable to interact, they get destroyed, right? Because ultimately, a lot of success in life is due to your ability to interact with other people.
So much even what they're consuming on the phone that's the problem, although that's also a problem, especially if it's a non-stop diet of apocalyptic nihilism.
Indeed.
It's also what they're not doing while they're on the phone, which is also the same with children. It's interfering with their ability to establish actual embodied relationships, right? Like,
yes.
If you're on your phone all the time, for example, you can't develop the social skills that makes you a desirable and challenging and provoking conversational partner, for example.
Right, and that's, again, this is a problem I saw, when I was out on the dating market, right? This is a problem I saw that was ubiquitous, right? Girls had no idea how to talk. All they knew how to do was primp and preen and press the buttons on their phone. Sorry, the screen now. And of course, that's not the way. You're never going to be successful doing that, for obvious reasons.
Example, in a social setting. And you can't replace that with the empty virtualization that's offered by text or the immediate amusement of the
TikTok.
iPhone.
Yeah.
That's an inappropriate substitute. It's no different than the substitute of pornography for sex.
Right. Exactly.
And so there's no way you can be healthy and have that occur, because the other thing, Piers, is that we conceptualize sanity very stupidly as modern people because we're atomistically individual. We think of sanity as something that you carry around in your head or that's a characteristic of your psyche. And that's actually not true. It's said that a mother is never any happier than her least happy child.
Yeah, what Jordan is describing here is the idea that we aren't islands into ourselves. We are actually the sum of the environment around us, right? And the people we interact with. When we become unable to interact with people correctly, we become unable to be sane in the traditional sense. I agree entirely. Great point.
And it's very difficult to be sane in an insane relationship. And what that points to is the fact that we find opportunity and positive delight and security in a network of embedded social relationships.
Indeed.
And the sanity is actually the harmony that prevails at all those levels of nested relationship. You can't be sane without friends. You can't be sane without a mate, even though a mate can also drive you insane.
Indeed.
We're social creatures to the degree that you can punish the most antisocial and psychopathic individuals imaginable by putting them in solitary confinement. And the iPhone technology, the cell phone technology, has interfered with the establishment of fundamental social relationships. And so it's going to severely disrupt mental health. And then the content, which you pointed to, is also an issue. Young people are being fed a constant diet of insistence that all human ambition is nothing but the manifestation of a planetary.
Yeah, like global warming. You're consuming too much. Egalitarian equalism. You have to pay for the sins of your father, and all that, right? That's the idea. That's what you're taught from a young age, right? You are the problem, not the people that got you into the negative place that you are as a result of their horrible actions and decisions. No, you must pay reparations for what people in the past did. And if you don't, you're the horrible person, which is, of course, hilariously terrible and couldn't possibly have a positive, effect on a person's life. But, that's neither here nor there, I guess.
Very devouring force, right? And that's the patriarchy, let's say.
Right.
And this
Evil.
idiotic and absurd insistence that human activity per se is going to produce an environmental calamity of unprecedented proportions.
Utterly
and immediately,
ridiculous.
unless we all cut down on our living. It's no bloody wonder they're depressed. I mean, how can you not be depressed when you're fed that diet nonstop? Right. Yeah.
There are people that genuinely believe that the earth is overpopulated. What an utterly ridiculous notion. Like, you just have to live tall and not wide, and the world is not overpopulated. Like, it's not overpopulated. And we're using our resources extremely inefficiently. Like, 99% of restaurants throw away their food every single day. 99% of food producers are throwing away food, which means we're not even close to inner crisis because we haven't yet been forced to be efficient in this realm. So it's obviously nuts, and yet we're supposed to believe it, right? And why are we supposed to believe it? We're supposed to believe it because, an authority tells us it's correct. So of course, if an authority tells us something, it must be true. Like, what nonsense. Anyway.
The interesting thing is what's happening, I think, to the woke world, if you like.
Oh,
which
Lordy
has been
Lord.
a sort of new form of fascism,
yes,
albeit ironically driven by people who would say fascism is their number one enemy.
Yeah.
I watched the Golden Globes last night, for example, an event that was taken off air last year in a row about racial bias and so on.
Oh, my Lord.
The institution that puts it on. And it came back on, really fascinating to me. I watched the whole thing for 3 hours. No political speeches, no virtue signaling, no grandstanding. People basically did what Ricky Gervais told them to do 3 years ago, which is get up, thank your agent, and sit down and just celebrate making movies or TV shows. Is this a sign, Jordan, do you think? I felt that there is a movement going on now of a real backlash from perhaps a majority that's been silent till now that's just said enough, and that even Hollywood has woken up to the reality that people who watch the movies and TV shows, they don't want to hear this stuff all the time.
Yeah. And, of course, every movie has to have a culturally diverse set of characters, right? It has to have, exactly one Asian, one dark-skinned person, one light-skinned person, one white person, one blonde person. It's nuts, right? Like, just represent the people in the area that you're trying to represent accurately, and you'll be fine. I don't understand this utter insistence on, if we don't have our main character as a certain race, we're racist. Like, that in itself, that idea is racist. Like, again, it's just hogwash. And yet, we're supposed to, take it on the chin. Like, it's nuts to me.
Well, we put politics first and foremost, and partly the reason we did that was because any higher aims in some ways collapsed. I suppose that's part and parcel of the famous death of God. If what's highest spiritually and transcendentally disappears, then something else steps up to take its place.
No,
and
that's
in our society, that's either been a
power
nihilistic
vacuum
bent that's very powerful, or politicking in general. And the problem with that is that
it's dumb.
You're supposed to render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and unto God what is God's. And the mistake that entertainers make is that they regard what they do as mere entertainment. Hollywood stars and all the people who were involved in producing the narratives that entice and compel us, they're serving a master who's far higher than anything merely political. And when they bend their art to serve a political master, they distort the higher to the lower to their own detriment. People aren't...
Indeed they do.
so that's the philosophical problem with an artist becoming political. It's art supersedes politics. The art should never be subordinated to serve the political, because then it gets, not only does it get propagandistic.
Indeed. And not only this, Jordan himself has said this, and it's, what do fascists hate the most? Comedians, right? Everything has to be dead serious. Nothing can be criticized. Everything has to be exactly as we say. That sort of principle is also utterly ridiculous and leads to the collapse of society. So, I don't even understand, how bad does it have to get before people finally say, no more, this is nuts? How long before people say, no, we want strong men. We want men that fight and are capable and are strong and are able to stand up for themselves. And again, it's the principle. And you've heard this before. Strong men create good times. Then, the good times create weak men. And then the weak men create hard times. And then the hard times create strong men. Right? So right now, we're in the hard times. We're living in the Dark Ages, proto-fascism, under a different name, oligarchs leading by religion, right? And the new religion is womanist wokeism. And yeah, ultimately, Jordan, we're going to have a neo-renaissance, right? God is going to die again, except this time, the God that's going to die is the God of womanist wokeism. This paper tiger that can't stand, it can't stand for long against a strong wind.
It gets dull and contemptible. No one cares what a star thinks about Trump, especially when what they have to say about Trump can be said just as coherently by your demented neighbor. But the fundamental problem is that we don't understand that the story is the thing. And these artists, movie stars, who are so privileged and often so talented and have this wonderful opportunity to shape the culture from which politics is downstream, have forgotten how sacred, you might say, their role mission truly is.
Yes.
And some of that's even a false humility. I suppose many Hollywood stars believe that their luxurious and privileged life isn't paid for by the grueling necessity of having to make a movie, which is more something like a great adventure. And so they feel guilty and feel that they have to serve something real. But the problem with that is that, well, who said the political was real first?
Right, and not only this, what's wrong with working hard on creating something that is not real in the sense that it's not in our direct lived experience? It can be produced as an indirect lived experience and still be hyper real as fiction.
First of all, and second, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being a profound storyteller. In fact, apart from being a profound artist, and perhaps profound spiritually, I can't think of anything that is more clearly dedicated to the highest possible cause. And when we forget that, we destroy art, and we destroy the people who make it, and we undermine our culture. And it's possible.
Yes. Ultimately, undermining art undermines the very people that art is meant to serve. It undermines humanity. And that's perhaps the greatest loss of our time, is that people don't understand. I agree entirely. Jordan is hitting on some strong points here. Very nice.
Well, as you pointed out, given this pullback, let's say at the Golden Globes, that the storytellers are starting to realize that subordinating their venture to the idiot political, especially a victim-victimizer narrative, which is the lowest form of the political, is counterproductive in every possible way, including financially, hence Disney.
And Gillette.
Yeah. I mean, and also I was
Man, what's wrong with Disney's old narrative? You know, like, get strong and then save the princess. What's wrong with that? Again, it's not be a loser idiot that bows down, kowtows to everything that other people tell you, and apparently that makes you a man, which is what the modern narrative is, which is, of course, utterly ridiculous. And not only is it ridiculous, it's just wrong. It's just plain. In every way you can imagine, it's wrong.
was struck by the juxtaposition of the globes with the rich and famous turning up and celebrating their art, which is great. And I totally agree with you that the art actually is a great calling. It was also great escapism when times are difficult. You know, in the middle of a pandemic and cost of living crisis and wars raging again in Europe and so on, to be able to escape into the world of television or movies is actually really important for people. It's good for people's mental health. But back in Britain, we've had this dreadful scandal involving people who are not rich and famous. They're just ordinary, hard-working members of the public who were running little post office branches, delivering the mail to people. And because of a faulty Japanese computer system, suddenly hundreds and hundreds of them were accused of fraud because the computers were malfunctioning. And they were, in many cases, put in prison. They were all given criminal convictions. Many suffered appalling mental health. Many lost everything they had. 4 of them committed suicide. An absolutely appalling scandal. And yet here we are 20 years later with it still unresolved, no accountability. The woman who ran the post office at the time got honoured for her work. Not.
You can't make this crap up. All right, let's end the video there. Hit the like, hit the sub, hit all the notifications. Drop me a donation like Hunter M, Adrian L, Tom and Bobby, Dylan, Renaissance Press, Brian, and Andrew C. Shoutouts to you, most recent purchaser of Strategist Guide to Seduction. Thank you. Again, my Patreon can be found at patreon.com/theheliosblog. My books can be bought at bit.ly/heliosbooks. And if you'd like coaching, just message me at my email, theheliosblog@gmail.com. Write me an email, and I'll slot you right in. Thank you so much for listening, guys, especially if you listen to the end. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.